Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your media questions 7 days a week. Let's go ahead and jump into those. Cindy, what do we have?
First up today, we have a question from Andre Dole in Berlin. I am searching for online courses regarding live streaming for my colleagues who want to get deeper understanding. Any recommendations?
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, Andrew, there's some great stuff on YouTube. There's a YouTube channel called officehours.global, I think. And they have like a couple thousand episodes where they talk about every manner of the whole streaming world. And I will tell you, I knew nothing about streaming until I joined Alex's little party here. And come on, there's a lot of good stuff here.
Yeah, I don't know a lot of other places that I would go. Here's the challenge. It depends on what kind of streaming you're doing. There's a lot of folks on YouTube that will talk about what I would call, mom and pop streaming. Like, this is how I do this on my laptop, or this is how I do it with a little ATEM and everything else. And so that's fine. It's just that it doesn't give you a sense of scale of what needs to happen. There's different versions of this. And so you have to look at what version you're doing. If you are doing it from your laptop or your computer, that's one version of it. But if you say, okay, well, now I want to stream for larger corporate entities or larger events, then there's a whole different set of equipment that you may end up using to do that. And then you may say, well, now I want to do, a broadcast, and then you have trucks and things and everything else. So you have to really decide who do you want to learn from, and what you want to learn, because the folks that are doing much larger productions will tell you to do a whole bunch of things that are really heavy if all you're trying to do is stream a couple cameras from your laptop. And so part of it is figuring out what that is. The only way we've been able to manage it here is that you go out and do it and then ask us questions. So a bunch of us have done it. And if you look at the people here, a lot of people here have done it at all the different scales. And so we hopefully will give you proper answers for the scale that you're working at any given time. My recommendation to learn live streaming is to find people that need live streaming and do it for them for free and figure it out. You cannot take a class and then go do a live stream. Like, it isn't, you need to work with other people that are doing live streams. You need to partner with a house of worship, a nonprofit, a business that you like, whatever that is, and say, hey, I can do this for you. And I have been doing this now for 20 years, and I still do that. I'm doing one in a week, that's free. And it's something that it's something that I think matters, and that's why I'm doing it. But it also gives me a chance to work with other people and for us to all figure out a different pipeline and so on and so forth. And so I'm constantly, doing that process to understand the process. And for me, a lot of times it's understanding the smaller pipeline processes that I've lost touch with over time. So I'm doing it in a more scrappy way, forces me to understand, how to do that. So I would recommend finding places to do it, working with other teams, and then asking questions here. I don't know of any courses that I would subscribe to. Next question.
David Brady in New York, and on the panel today is asking, last week I noticed a refresh artifact on our LED wall when viewed through the camera feed, vertical scrolling banding. Assuming this is a genlock issue, how should a fix be approached? Lots of conversion from SDI, HDMI to Evertz fiber and back.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, make sure if everything does have a genlock, make sure all your cameras have that external reference turned on, and make sure video wall has that same external reference turned on. Another thing that you might look at, you don't mention what type of video wall or what type of cameras. Some digital cameras these days will change. They have an automatic mode for exposure. You want to keep them in manual exposure and use the actual aperture to control the exposure. Hopefully these are professional cameras and that's the way they're being done. Because some cameras will automatically change the timing of the sample rate of the sensor. In other words, it's changing the shutter speed to compensate for overexposure. So if a sudden bright image comes up on that video wall, it will shorten the exposure time of that particular camera, and that can throw them, and can shorten it to a point where you will actually see the blanking moving up. But if the bar is moving, that means that they're not genlocked together. So if they were genlocked, you might see a bar, you might see an artifact when that happens. But if it's moving, there's probably a problem with the frame rates not matching between the two. So make sure they're genlocked to the same frame rate. And a lot of times the video wall will take that input reference and then they'll go at a much higher refresh rate like 120 to 240 frames per second to avoid those kind of artifacts. But it sounds like you're getting an artifact based on a difference in frame rate between the camera and the video wall.
Good, Chris.
I've just been enjoying, with the advent of this new Blackmagic thing that genlock into an iPhone, I've been enjoying watching YouTubers try to explain genlock. It's been kind of fun.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, it's a couple of Panasonic 4K PTZ cameras shooting at the wall. The wall is in front of a window and it's movable. I'll get some pictures and try to share what it is, but it is like a vertical.
Big vertical line moving up. Yep, that's a genlock issue.
It's a horizontal line, but it's
a horizontal line that scans up. Yep. So there's two things that are going on there. Your frame rate isn't the same, and the genlock isn't the same. And so it doesn't. All the stuff in between doesn't matter. All the Evertz and the HDMIs. The only thing that matters is that the LED wall and the camera are genlocked together. So the camera has to refresh. The camera sensor has to refresh as exactly the same rate as the LED wall. Now, most likely the LED wall could be running either at the same frame rate as the camera, but more likely the same frame rate as the shutter speed, which would be twice the camera. So if you're running the camera at 60 frames a second, what we've seen in the past, I don't know what's happening on yours, but what we've seen in the past is that often, as Courtney said, the refresh is twice the what we think of the frame rate. So if we have a 60 frame per second system, the refresh on the wall is 120. But the problem is that if you're running 60 frames a second, your shutter is running at 120. So the issue is that the shutter is the same as the wall and it's not lined up, and what that results in is a little line that goes up like this. So my either increase the refresh rate of the wall, which may not be possible, but I think that if you genlock the camera but all the stuff in between, I mean, it'd be great to genlock everything. I mean, generally we try to genlock everything we can when we're dealing with LED walls. This is the thing we worry about all the time. But the most important thing is that the camera and the wall are both refreshing at the same time. That's if you genlock those, the front and the back of that, then it typically will work. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you point two cameras, if you have two cameras, point two cameras at the same wall and see if the vertical bar appears at the same spot on both cameras. If it does, that means the cameras are synced to each other, but the wall is out of sync. So then check your reference feed to the wall, so you can check it that way.
Or you just get lucky. I actually did that once, and they were both the same, and we found out that it was not the case, but it was just the cameras just happened to. That's the problem with not genlocking, is you just don't know. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
What's really frightening is that horizontal bar is always there, but your eye doesn't see it. And I think this is how you peer through dimensions and see interdimensional beings that are traveling through space and time.
Chris, you got to tweak that medication. That's all I'm saying. So, all right, next question.
This one is for me, Cindy Drozda in Erie, Colorado. I use NDI to bring vMix audio and video into Zoom. For the past few months, the NDI Webcam app has been quitting mid-show. I have restarted the computer many times and reinstalled NDI Tools. Ideas what's causing this?
I don't have, we don't know vMix that well. It usually sounds like there's some kind of resource issue. You don't have enough resources. Do you know what your CPU level is while you're working with the webcam app?
No.
So you
check that, but
yeah, you want to see what your resource, what your computer's running at when you're running it. It ending. As you start to add things, it's easy. The problem with software in general to do switching is that they can ask the computer to do more than it can do. And so they don't know, so they just keep asking for more. And the computer, when it gets to too much, it's going to start shuffling things off. So what you need to know is what is your CPU level at while you're running the show, and you need to leave it open so that you can see, what is, like when you're doing tests, and it's and maybe not during the show, but when you're doing tests, running all the things that you're going to run, where is the computer? What is its CPU level at? If it's over 60%. You're too high. And usually what you're going to find is the anomalies that you're seeing here often occur at 70, 75%. It's going to start, because remember, that's an average. It's not happening it says real time, but it's averaged over seconds. And so what you're going to see, it could be spikes, and those one hard spike. The reason that you need to be at 60% is you're getting little spikes in between it that are much higher than that. And if they go over 100, it's going to start closing things. So you have to. That's why it's important. A lot of people have a bad habit of running their CPUs much hotter than their design, than 60%, and then they can't figure out why they're getting anomalies. But that's the first thing that I would look at if something was quitting. Now, it could be an update to Windows. It could be, there's a lot, because you're using this. This is the, how are you using the webcam app itself? You're using it to deliver it back to the stream?
The webcam app takes the vMix output and makes it a webcam in Zoom or also in Google Chrome for StreamYard.
Yep. Yeah. So, all of those types of apps are a little unstable. Like that's a pretty common problem, that they're not really as stable as we'd like them to be, and that's across the board for every one of them. But especially when you get to higher CPU usages. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, Cindy, I'd also check to see if the network conditions as well. If you're using like a Discovery server within that NDI thing, Discovery server can run on something as simple as a Raspberry Pi, and all NDI things register to it, rather than using the MDNS Discovery that's native to NDI. That might have something to do with it, and also why, if you're trying to do it over wireless, that's not really the best way for NDI. Yeah.
And Cindy, everything's wired, and it's all on the same computer. Yeah.
All on the same computer, and you're all wired. And it's been working for years, and now suddenly was there a Windows update that happened recently? There are constant Windows updates, so yeah. Always a suspect.
That's usually my first. I have to admit, if something's been working for years and then it breaks, the suspect on Windows is that you got forced to do an update. Generally, I believe it's the enterprise version of Windows allows you to turn off updating permanently. And so the Windows updates are the number one factor in many, many problems. Like they break things often. When Microsoft's not worried about all your apps working, they're worried about security, and so they run these patches and these updates, and they can close things off very quickly. And I got this. It's the reason I stopped using Oculus for a long time, is because every time Windows updated it, my Oculus headset stopped working. so I had to wait for a while until the next update came out. And so until it got, I was like, I'm never going to tether to a computer again. But it's also why, again, there are a lot of people that are very successful with PCs. Windows updating is the number one reason I don't use them in production. It's just this idea that you're going to force me to change my system. I have systems that are years old that haven't been updated because they work, and I don't need them to be changed. And Windows, Microsoft's insistence on making sure everybody changes has me not using that platform. Next question.
Cochran in Seattle, USA is asking, what are some options for getting 16 channels of analog audio into a Blackmagic Web Presenter HD? I have the 4.1 update and an X32, as well as 9 AJA KI Pro rack.
Key pros. Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, I don't know about analog audio, but you can get embedded SDI, 16 channels of SDI audio.
I think he's trying to figure out how to embed the SD. How do you embed the audio into the SDI is the question. I think that's what he's trying to figure out how to do, is how to get 16 channels in. Yeah,
you've got to get something, an external embedder that will embed your
right. I think that's what he's looking for.
Take either a MADI input from the X32 or some other type of multi-channel serial audio input into the Blackmagic embedder. I'm not sure what the inputs on the Blackmagic embedder are. Do you know, Alex?
So the way to look at, there's not that many that will do 16. There's a lot that will do 8. So there's a couple different ways of doing this. There are AJA and I can't think of the other name right now, make a Dante to SDI embedder that will do all 16 channels. So AJA's new device is a little expensive. It's like $2,500 or something like that. As well as there's another one. I want to say NTech, but I don't think it's that. they both have Dante to 16 channels. Now the FS2, FS4, FS-HDR, which I think David was holding up, they'll do 8. So if it's an FS2, it will do it with analog inputs. If it's an FS4 or an FS-HDR, it will do it with AES inputs. And so they have breakout cables on the back, and David has the back. Is that an FS? Which it's an FS1. Oh, okay, yeah. And the FS1 and FS2 will both be analog. So if you see those breakouts, those two DB25s on the back there, those are the breakouts, and those I believe that there's only 8 channels of breakout for that. Does it say 1 to 8 or yeah, it's 1 to 8. So 1 to 8 is easy. 1 to 16 is harder when it comes to embedding. Now, the other thing is AGA doesn't want to pay for Dante, so we end up with MADI. So you have to figure out how you're going to get from, if you have a MADI card in your X32, then Bob's your uncle, which is a technical term that actually came from the 18th century or 19th century. Anyway, I was surprised that it actually is a term.
Fanny's your aunt.
There actually was a Bob. There actually was a Bob, and he actually had an uncle. So anyway, so the
who needs to fix their medication? Who?
Yeah, exactly. I just thought I'd give a little history lesson there. I wasn't talking about extra sensory. Anyway, so anyway, the problem with the Key Pros is they'll only do stereo. That's the most common. If you get a throwdown box like a Blackmagic, now Blackmagic only makes 6G, so it goes up to 6G. You can also get 3G ones. You can get embedders from AJA that are 12G. These throwdown boxes will have, they'll do up to 8. And again, both of them to get up to 8 is AES. And so you'll need to figure out a way that you're going to deliver AES to those throwdowns. Those are going to be a little less expensive than getting an FS2 to make that actually happen. But I don't know of a lot of other, there's probably some software ways to do that embedding. I mean, you could technically, and I've done this because I've been doing other tests, you can technically pass it through Resolve and embed all the channels and have it come out correctly. I haven't done it up to 16. I've done up to 6 because I'm worried about 5.1. so that's possible. So up to 8 is easy. Up to 16 is more challenging. There's less tools that make that quick and easy. But those are the ways that you probably would need to embed those channels. There are lots of things that will play out those channels. So for instance, you can play out, if you have a file that already has those channels, then you have things like, there's a lot of software that will play it out. So go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, one question on the Web Presenter, it only outputs stereo over the USB webcam, doesn't it? Or does it carry up if you have 16 channels coming in on the SDI that
for which one?
Pass through the Web Presenter HD?
No, there's an update. That's why he's interested in 16. Is that the update now supports up to 16 channels? It's brand new, like this week.
So it's 16 channels on the USB-C output, then the webcam output.
No, I think it's 16 channels to stream RTMP or SRT.
Oh, I see.
The new the presenter update allows you to now see more channels, and that opens up the opportunity. The thing that's interesting there is that now you could theoretically use a very inexpensive box. I don't know about the HD one, but the UHD one will now theoretically be able to do HDR 10-bit and up to 16 channels output, and it'd be if that works, it would be the least expensive solution to get that and that combination. So we haven't tested it yet, but I think that where Guy's trying to go, my understanding here is that he's trying to get to like how do I even get those channels on there live? And again, I think 8 channels is a relatively straightforward thing. 16 channels, again, the AJA Dante to SDI is probably the best small unit, but again, it's still expensive. I think it's $2,500 or something like that to do it. I don't know of a lot of less expensive ways to embed that many channels. It used to be things like the PIX 260. The PIX 260 would do it. It would take Dante and embed all those channels onto it. But that you can rent that, and you might be able to buy it used. But I don't know of another way to make that happen. Next question.
This one's from TJ Asher in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Can Jeff Cohen and Cindy share their experience with the latest Mac Unity client update and the echo cancellation setting and how that affected core audio?
All right, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, this was fun. So let me show this, for a couple episodes, I was having problem with my audio when I joined the panel. I didn't have any problem with my audio when I wasn't on the panel, and couldn't even reproduce or figure out why I was having audio problems after the show was over when I tried to recreate and diagnose the problem. So after a few frustrating shows when I had to change and use a backup audio chain, I finally got around to realizing that when I launched Unity, echo cancellation was turned on, which is a weird feature. And this is perhaps a great lesson, certainly for me and everyone, that this is a Mac App Store app. It did the update. I wouldn't have even thought to check that, but I think the fact that now at least one other person had it confirms that I, wasn't in a stupor and just changed a setting on my own one day. It seems to have enabled that setting, and for whatever reason, that caused this audio problem. And it was like a noise gate. I could hear it, but most of the time the audio was far too low to hear, to be reasonable to use. And that's what it was doing. And why? I mean, it's got a setting to take over the audio chain that was not enabled, so it shouldn't have even been doing that.
I'm just going to invoke a really funny statistical joke here. Before we go too far of making decisions about why it happened, that I just saw a couple. I have a tendency to save these things from X. It said, I used to think that correlation implied causation. Then I took a statistics class, and now I don't know. And it goes, sounds like the class helped. He goes, well, maybe. So anyway,
Exactly.
so we want to be careful. I mean, I have the echo cancellation on right now, and it's not doing that. It doesn't have that effect. So we want to be careful of making any broad decisions on something we're still learning. I don't know if that is the only factor that has it be that problem.
I can say quite definitively that was absolutely the cause of the problems I was having.
For you,
once I found it.
But for you,
me.
I have echo cancellation turned on. I can't turn it off, and it's fine. So I don't know if it's
understood, although why you can't, but no doubt. And I think it's also speaks to, complexity,
right.
Always introduces unexpected variables. If I just had a USB mic plugged in, that would be easier to diagnose. I'm using virtual audio drivers through the sound decks, mixer with
right, exactly.
channels,
So
absolutely,
which I won't do because then I have problems like this. I don't do that for shows or anything else because I'm like, I don't want to. I've had too many issues with building complex software solutions in my. You'll see that I'm somewhat anti-software solutions sometimes for live things because you end up with you have a very but for someone listening you have a very complex web of things that are happening, but it may not be a one-to-one relationship between turning on the echo cancellation. It's pulling at some string and something is popping out the other end, but where that string connects to is may not be replicatable elsewhere. What were you, Cindy? Cindy, are you using a software mixer as well?
No, I have no software, or no loopbacks, or apps, or chains, or any of that stuff. And what was happening for me was this mic was not. It was so quiet, it was unusable in Zoom.
Right.
And another mic, which is useless, was loud enough. So for some reason, Unity was beating up this mic alone. And as soon as Jeff suggested that echo cancellation, which I don't remember ever turning on, so it might be some update thing there. But I can't blame software here because I just have a XLR mic plugged into a
and you're on
very
a PC,
plain
right?
Jane. No, I'm on a Mac here.
Okay, on a Mac.
I use a PC in the shop with vMix and NDI.
Got it.
Mac, though.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I think the important takeaway on this whole topic, and I agree, correlation, causation, blah, blah, blah. But there is a bag of tricks that we all need to know in terms of fixing things. And one of my favorite is what I call jiggle the handle, like the toilet. Well, just jiggle the handle. Maybe the leaking will stop. And last week on Zoom with Mickey, I had a very interesting thing happen. I'm having similar problems to what Jeff is having, also very complex, and I understand why you don't like to rely on complex software things, Alex. I don't disagree. But I had a setting, two quick examples. One in loopback where a device was not passing audio, yet it was turned on. It wasn't passing audio. I turned it off in the little on-off switch in loopback. All of a sudden, it started to pass audio in the off position. I turned it back on, and it continued to pass audio. That's what I call jiggling the handle. Sometimes you just got to hit things on, off, on, off, on, off. Maybe that'll change it. And then also, just this morning, on the Unity, wasn't hearing the crew on the Unity. It was selected in the little gear icon. It was sending it to the right place. I now know, I've written down where I need to have it set to. It was sending it to the right place. I changed it to the wrong place, and then I changed it back to the right place, and all of a sudden it's passing audio.
But and the thing that I will do, maybe not during a production, but very quickly after, there's a whole lot of lab time of me figuring out why that was the case, and is it reproducible, and what can, it's not just jiggling the handle, for instance, as you know, Chris, is there's a small chain that goes to the plunger, that goes to the closing, and it gets a kink. And when you jiggle it, it lets that kink go, and then that's why it works.
Is that what it does? Is that what it is?
That's jiggling the handle actually works because the little chain that goes there gets hooked. It just got into a wrong position on that chain, and when you jiggle the handle, it releases that because it's not tangled; it's just caught.
So you want to know why the chain got.
You want to know why jiggling the handle works. You don't want to say, well, you just jiggle the handle, because if you keep on doing that, then things keep on happening randomly. And so so for me, if something happens randomly, I will be terrified until I understand exactly what it is, and I can isolate it and reproduce it. And that's something you want to. And admittedly, that obsession of mine leads you away from software and towards appliances, because the appliances are more predictable. They'll do exactly the same thing every single time. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I think you need to make the suggestion to the software authors that they install a little button in Loopback and Hijack that's called Jiggle the Handle. And you just press that button, and it rebuilds all the routing tables from its last known good version, and just reconstructs all its I/O when you just click that one button.
And then have a flushing sound effect. You're set. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, and actually I was just going to kind of emphasize the conversation that we've had many times on the show, which is the pros and cons to software solutions versus hardware solutions. And this is definitely one of the cons. I think there's lots of pros, but this is definitely one of the cons in the software solution column, where they can change things essentially on your system without you knowing it until perhaps it's a problem and you have to backtrack.
And I highly recommend turning off any kind of auto updates everywhere. The system, your apps, there's tools to do that. Except for Windows Update, there's ways to turn off every other update. It doesn't mean, and then you check. I'll look at my thing. Go, oh, I got to update. The reason that that's important is that you consciously are hitting update for a whole bunch of things, and then when something breaks the next day, you can remember it. The problem you have with when it's auto updating is you don't know when that actually happened, and then you won't know when this happened. So I update my stuff about once a week, and usually on a Friday, so that I have the weekend to be surprised. And so and I don't like to do it on there's a secret to a lot of updates for big companies that do platforms. Anyway. Wednesday is the day that they usually update. It gives them a couple of days to prep everything, and then on Wednesday they update it because they have Thursday and Friday to deal with the bugs, and then they go home for the weekend. No one wants to do anything on Friday. I do it on Friday because I feel like they've probably finished whatever they're doing, and then I'll turn it on, and then I have a weekend to break it, to make that happen. But Wednesday is the day that if you're going to see anomalies, you will often see it on Wednesday. Next question.
This one comes to us through the QR code from Mike in Denmark. Could you please explain how your office hours live streams as of October 2025 are working technically? What gear, servers, applications, etc.?
I feel like we should do a whole new special on this just to kind of break down what it is, because it's constantly evolving, and I don't think I could describe it in any reasonable amount of time today. So, but to say very roughly, all of us are joining a Zoom. That Zoom is being joined by a couple computers in Michigan. Those computers output all of our individual feeds via Zoom ISO, and then the audio separately out to a hardware system. So this is this is running through Blackmagic switchers, and there's some AJA FSs that they run through for control if we want it. We don't use it all the time. That is switched. There's a brain that's using Trickotronics Isadora that makes a lot of decisions based on data that comes in from Mukana, which is the Q&A system that you're in. Or maybe you're not. This came from a QR code, but there's a Q&A system, and that Q&A system knows when different panelists have raised their hand and a lot of other things. And that all that data combined with a technical director that's tapping, what they want it to do, is used to talk to the switcher. The switcher, Isadora, sends out what's OSC commands. Those OSC commands go to a program called Mix Effect Pro, which we like to refer to as the ATEM whisperer. So it takes those OSC commands and converts it into ATEM requests. All of that program file is then sent to a Videon encoder and sent to the internets. And so that is the most simplified version that I can think of. It may not be 100% accurate, but it's probably 90% accurate. And again, it's always changing. It's probably sometime this year, before we end of the year, probably a good time to walk everybody through it again. Next question.
Vic Hernandez in Springfield, Missouri is asking, 50% rhetorical, 50% serious. Is there anyone here who is not down with Rick Beato?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, I'm down with Rick Beato, and if you haven't seen Rick's YouTubes, Everything Music with Rick Beato, this is the guy here. You probably recognize him if you've seen him. If his videos have come across your YouTube feed, and he has more than 2,000 videos. He's an educator, a musician, and I don't know if your question is about if you're down with Rick. Rick has been fighting a war with the copyright bots right now, because a lot of his videos are breakdowns of the top 20 the greatest guitar solos or something, or AI, or the top 20. He does these top 20 greatest electric intros or top 20 greatest bass intros, stuff like that. And he's been getting copyright strikes from the copyright bots on YouTube, and has been fighting against those. So he's fighting the good fight. In fact, during Rick, he's got one down here called Rick Rants. So maybe some of his rants are down there. Oh, look, he has one about Apple. It's good if you like crap. I wonder what motivated that. I don't know. That was 8 years ago, so they've improved a lot. That was before the M-series chips, so we'll give him that one. But I'm down with him as far as trying to somehow apply fair use, and all of the stuff that he uses, all of the stuff that he does is educational and informational, and would always come under the guise of fair use of the Copyright Act, and he shouldn't be getting copyright strikes and all this stuff, and he may not be able to continue his channel unless he can work out a deal with YouTube so that he is whitelisted or something on his videos. He has more videos, almost more videos than we do here at Office Hour.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, he's also been to Congress and fighting about this, and been asked to come and speak there. Him and the Professor of Rock, is that the website? The guy with the silly glasses?
Yes.
Yeah. These guys are doing a really great service, and they're making music more accessible and more understandable. And the fact that these lawyers and the bots are so short-sighted, it's like fighting Napster. It's like Napster, I still say Napster was a great thing, but whatever. It's really, there needs to be humanity put into some of these decisions. And frankly, this is the beginning of the downfall, and the Terminator's taking over. We can't let the computers take over everything. It's ridiculous. And Rick has even said that he's gotten a strike on a video, fought it. He has a lawyer on retainer full time just to fight all of his stuff, and then he gets it cleared, And then like 6 months later, he'll get the same strike because the robots
it's not the robots.
They're relentless.
Not the robots are not. I mean, so I'm down with Rick. Rick, I think I know Rick. so I think that Rick does a great job. I think he does great content. He can be a little bit of a curmudgeon, I always cross check like opinions sometimes with my daughter who's deep in music right now, and she's in 5 bands and listens to all kinds of stuff. And I asked when Rick said, 5 bands. She plays drums in 2 of them and bass in 3 of them. And anyway, and plays lead guitar. And anyway, so she's busy. But Rick said, there's no good music coming out now, and he's talking about it. And my daughter was like, it's never been better. Like the music has never been better as far as the variety because everyone can record at their house. And so as a result, you just have so many different, they're not pop songs. The pop has become completely useless, but the what you can get a hold of in Apple Music has never been deeper. But what I will say is that, it's not, I mean, Rick talks about the bots a little bit, but it's not just the bots. It's someone has to push a trigger to give you a strike. So it's the strikes. Now, they may have using a bot and says, give everybody a strike, but someone made a decision to not demonetize you, but to give you a strike. And that's what really upsets. It bothers Rick. It's his business to demonetize him. But what really is a problem is if you get a strike, that is a very, very aggressive stance made by a human being, not by a bot to give you a strike, because the strikes were what everybody did at the beginning. And then the Luddites in the music industry kept on giving strikes. So like the Eagles and other, never to play the Eagles on YouTube. So the old thinkers, still give strikes out, but the new ones generally will either do nothing. You can track, you can demonetize, or you can strike. And then, there's another one where you can blank it out. And every once in a while you'll see a video where everyone goes silent. You can say, well, you can't just mute the audio. And that's kind of a halfway in between that. And so we don't care here because we don't monetize our streams. So we play anything we want as long as they don't give us a strike. And I have tested it. It doesn't affect our views. It doesn't affect anything else. We can play all the music we want as long as it doesn't strike. So I think that I do think that it's serious. I think that what's missing in either the law, I think what's missing in the law is retribution for what I would consider. I would consider going after someone for fair use, and I should talk to Rick about this. I think that's racketeering. I think that's a RICO law. So it is when you are constantly attacking someone using a tool that doesn't. And I will admit that I'll lean. My father was a specialist in RICO, so when he was a prosecutor. So anytime I see someone doing a pattern of low-level illegal actions that are constantly a problem, that falls under this. That's what the RICO laws were designed for. Was that a whole bunch of little things that none of them account for a large, a big penalty, but in their group they are a penalty. And I think that RICO laws might apply here because the Universal specifically, not all the record companies, but Universal specifically, is aggressively overusing the copyright laws and the mechanisms inside of YouTube. YouTube's in a position where they kind of can't just turn everything off. I mean, they have a relationship with the music industry. People have to be within some reason. What we need is really and the problem is that most of the politicians are in the pocket of the music industry because they give them lots of money, so it's, because they're corrupt, and that's the way politics works. And so there's a whole bunch of money in their campaigns. And so they're less likely to push the proper laws, which is what should happen is if you claim that someone is using your stuff and then it's found that they're not, you should have to pay for that. You should have to pay $250,000 every time you do that. So it needs to be serious. The problem is there's no retribution. There's no accountability for the people making the claims. If they were fined every time they made a claim that wasn't accurate, and they could say, oh, we'll just take it down. But if they push again, and that's, if they push again, and I believe that's actually in the law, but I think that they've had trouble, executing that. But the main thing is that if someone pushes again and overuses the copyright law, they should be fined $250,000. And if they did that, this would probably tighten itself up pretty quickly. Jeff.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that I'm seeing a few more folks on YouTube reporting, and whether it's copyright or whether it's just terms and conditions, that this does seem to be happening on a far more automated frequency, and then the appeal, whether it's a strike or whatever it is, or just a video being removed altogether. And so folks are saying, for example, they request it or they do an appeal, and, you know, a minute later it comes back, you know, also denied. You know, it's as if, you know, you're asking the same bot that just gave you the strike, you know, to appeal itself. So I think that's some of the frustration folks are also seeing, whether it's copyright or this ambiguous terms and conditions, where, of course, none of the platforms ever tell you the actual thing you violated, other than you violated terms and conditions.
Well, and again, the other thing is that you have YouTubers that get upset because someone else used their content. You know, so there's this other side of it where not Rick necessarily, but many YouTubers will get upset if you take their video and use it in your video. You know, so they want to be protected by the same thing that they complain about sometimes. so you kind of have to be kind of careful of, you know, and it's the culture of YouTube. It's why YouTube has a hard time competing with TikTok, is because YouTube Shorts are fine, but TikTok has a culture of copying. Like it is expected. People literally put things on the platform to be copied, you know, and so it's a very different, and that's one of the reasons that TikTok is so much more, appealing to a lot of younger viewers than Shorts, is because there's a meme culture where people are using the same audio and doing their take on that audio, which is, I think, a fascinating culture in itself. But anyway, I do agree that Rick, and if you haven't listened to Rick's amazing. Like, so many great breakdowns, so many great interviews. So much great there. And there's Rick Beato, and there's Rick Beato 2, which is where all the cool interviews live. So check out both of them. They're great. Next question.
This one is from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. What is the best alternative to the iFootage Cobra 3 Monopod Base P Mini desktop tripod for my Sony ZV? It's decent, but has limitations, I'm finding out. Returning it, LOL, with a link.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I took a look at this, and this is just like a little mini tripod that sits on top of your desk. And the problem is you can't really adjust the height other than changing the angle of the legs. I guess it's got some stops at 50 degrees, 70 degrees, and 0 degrees. So, and of course, the higher you get your camera, the less stable it is because the legs are closer together. So there's no vertical adjustment on this mini tripod. You know, a better solution might be to have a simple magic arm from Manfrotto. These are about $125. I have my cameras mounted on something like this with a clamp that'll clamp it to the desk, and then you can position your camera wherever you want it. You flip this one lever and it locks all the ball joints, so you can adjust the height up to, this one's 12 inches or 15 inches. You can get them in different lengths. And that way you can get it up to a height that you like and an angle that you like, and then just flip that one lever and lock it in. But it's hard to do fine adjustments on, so once you have it locked, you got to hold on to the camera, move it where you want it, and then lock it down again. You can't just like pan the camera a little bit to the right or a little bit to the left that you can with a normal tripod.
Yeah, I wouldn't, don't put your camera on a tripod on your desk. The real answer is finding it. You put a tripod on the other side of your desk, attach it to the wall, attach it to something else. Don't put it on the desk. I mean, that'd be my solution for this. You're going to have trouble. You're going to constantly be dealing with this. If you're building anything that is remotely permanent, I would highly recommend separating the desk from the camera whenever possible. And I do that even with the mic. My mic is not attached to the same table that I'm on, but definitely one of the first things we try to do. Now, if we're doing sending something out semi-permanently or whatever, we'll send out. Oben makes a lot of little tripods that we use pretty often. They have ones that have like extending centers that might work for you. But I think that if you're doing this for a home space, think about permanent things that make sense for that space, not just temporary things. Next question.
Zach Stahlsmith in Chautauqua, New York is asking, with Wirecast Zoom integration, is it possible to send participants' audio out via loopback to an X32 to properly mix their audio and then send that back to Wirecast? I'm on a Mac.
I don't know if you would. Number one, there might be a delay there, with software and everything else, that you may end up with the audio coming in a little behind the video, which could be problematic. I think that the other thing is, I don't know if Wirecast is designed to send all of those channels out individually. I know that in something like Mimo Live, you just set up different streams for each one of those, and they would all send it out. Then you'd bring it back in. You probably would want to bring it back in not as channels, but as a stereo mix, and so then you would embed that back in. I know that it would work in Mimo. I don't think that Chris Sabato says that Wirecast audio routing is terrible. So I don't know if that's, I know that in Mimo Live we'd be able to do it. I don't know if I could do it in Wirecast because I haven't used Wirecast for a while. So that I think that's all I could say. I don't know. It's just a matter of, can you take those and isolated outputs from Wirecast 6 or 8? And I don't think you can, but I'm not sure. By the way, if you are listening to this and you're wondering why I keep on referring back to Makana, you're missing half the show if you're not in Makana. You can get into Makana by going to officehours.global/join. And when you go there, you can sign up and you'll start getting emails. There'll be links to our Discord and Makana. Next question.
Here's one from Tim Snyder in Louisville, Kentucky. Want to use an iPhone and gimbal for close-up shots as groups enter a football field, sending feed to StreamVoodoo. We know it won't fully match our cameras and there will be delay. Any concerns with this or better alternatives?
Go ahead, Courtney.
It depends on how you're connected with that iPhone, 5G, 4G, LTE, and the stadium, because a lot of times there's a tunnel that leads from the dressing rooms to the field of the football and the football field. And if you're in that tunnel, it's probably a nice little Faraday cage, and it may cut off your reception. If you're out in the field itself, there may be transponders that are specifically designed to give 5G coverage to that particular stadium, and you can pay for a higher connection rate and a more private connection rate to 5G if you talk to your different phone suppliers there in that stadium. There will be some latency, but if you're not doing lip sync, I wouldn't worry about it too much. So as long as you're in the middle of the football stadium and not in the tunnel, it might work for you. And look and see if you can buy a better connection from the AT&T, Verizon, or T-Mobile in that particular stadium for 5G or LTE.
Yeah, one of the challenges also is that you'll test this when the stadium is empty while you're in pre-show, and then people will show up and they'll saturate the cell towers. And so what you get during you're going to have to test it. The latency itself, usually when we throw to a field, the latency doesn't matter as much because we're not trying. You just got to be careful not taking the same audio. You got to take the audio from the camera that's on the ground. And if you do that, everything will appear to be in sync, and you just got to do a hard throw to it, as opposed to trying to. Sometimes interacting back and forth means that people will feel it in a way that you wouldn't feel otherwise. Next question.
Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas is back with us. I got the Office Hours suggested SmallRig Universal cage with quick release clips and the selfie screen. Now, what are the next steps to trick it out for roving around at events with handles, mic, light, magsafe charging, monopod? Keep it lean and light and low price.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that you want to think about how you're going to get audio in. Now, I don't have the system that I'm using is electrosonic, so with a mix pre, so that's not light and lean in the same way that you would have it there. But you will find that you'll have a lot of trouble doing it in other ways. That's the challenge is that as you start to scale down, things become less and less. The problem is when you go into an event, especially a tech event or South by Southwest, which I think you might be focused on. But if you go into any kind of tech event, there's more and more RF. There's a reason that I'm doing some early tests in a farmer's market because there's not a lot of RF. It's vegetables. I'm competing with vegetables, and but when you go into something that's more tech driven, you have LED walls and you have other transmitters and you have lots of other things that vegetables don't have. And As far as the mics go, you might get it something very small like DJI mics. They may work. I would try to do as much available light. You're going to find that an iPhone handles light pretty well, and I would try to, unless it's a dark environment, the problem with lights is they look really sourcey at times, and I'd rather have it just look more natural in that environment. Think about the breakouts. I think that the Condor Blues breakout is probably the best one that you can easily attach to the rig, and that's going to give you a couple breakouts that you're going to be able to apply power. You're going to be able to apply those things. The Manfrotto pod, the iPhoto one, that little foot that you had there, that low profile, iPhoto makes a whole tripod with a big foot that you may find works really, really well. I know some other people that use those pretty often, but you're going to tend to want to have one extra person that's there with you that's going to hold it if you're trying to do some interviews. You can't really just leave a monopod by itself and expect it to stay up. So that'd be the thing that I would think about, is how you're going to work with someone else. And then also think about how you're going to work with remote folks. So if you have that little screen, it's a matter of who's going to be on the other end of that process. Next question.
Next up is panelist Jeff Cohen in Miami Beach, Florida. Curious to hear opinions. Do you find the amazing Times Square animations in David's backdrop distracting?
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, and this is genuine curiosity to hear thoughts. And I think David cheated a little bit, because in his normal shot, I think he cropped a little bit from where we were at the beginning of the show. So, and I'm really torn on this, because I think it's interesting, but then at a couple moments I found myself just engrossed in the animation, and probably if David were speaking at that moment, I probably wouldn't have maybe heard all of what David said, and maybe this is more an issue for meetings than maybe broadcasting, but I'm just curious to hear thoughts. And as a bonus question, if anyone has an answer, if the thought is it's not good, is there other options, perhaps overlays or fancy stuff, as opposed to just cropping or moving the angle?
Go ahead, David.
Well, today I am at the office. The one thing you're not seeing is the big McDonald's sign, which is like over here, and it's constantly Big Macs and French fries in my face all day. I do find it kind of disturbing, but at dusk, it's not bad. If I had better bokeh control on this camera, it would probably be less distracting. But yeah,
go ahead, Chris.
I tune in just for the background shot, David.
I think so obviously if it's all around you, I think that when David's centered up the way he is right now, I don't find it to be distracting at all. In fact, I like the fact that you feel like I like the fact that you feel like someone's somewhere, as opposed to trying to hide where they are. So having, that there, and I think that obviously if the person is centered, in general, I would do that. Now, when someone has low bandwidth, or if there's a lot else going on, a lot of things going on, the other challenge is really just the load on the encoder. So when you're encoding, when Zoom is encoding, if there's too many moving pixels, it will reduce the quality of the subject. So we've had issues where someone's sitting in front of a bush and there's wind, so that bush is moving a little bit, and that is very hard for for Zoom or Hangouts or anything else to manage, because it's too many pixels moving at the same time. They can't prioritize. So that's and the funny thing is they usually prioritize the leaves instead of the person, because the person isn't moving very much and the leaves are. And so it goes, I'm just going to pay attention to the leaves, and the person gets all pixelated. But I think overall, exposure is a challenge. But I also think that, David, if you just add a bunch of ND to those windows there, I'm sure that no one there will mind that if you just started adding ND filters to the whole thing.
I'd love to.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, but
I'll tell you that McDonald's sign though, if it's dusk, like I'll get the red or whatever color, because it's
right.
I think about 6 stories tall, right. That display.
So great. But overall, I would say that I love the fact that we get a location, that I'm coming in from an office. So I would prioritize that over all other potential distractions. Next question.
Here's one from Andy Kokendorfer in Viera, Florida. Does office hours have a cohort of Google Oh, what is that? Cloud production virtual machine users that can offer support for newbie questions? Thanks.
Go ahead, Courtney.
You know, you might look for Guy Cochran on here, and he has a lot of experience because he spins up a lot of Amazon Web Services virtual machines, and I don't know if he's toyed around with the Google Cloud platforms to do the same thing. But if you see Guy on a panel, hit him up with a question and see if he's experimented with the alternative to AWS GCP.
Yeah, I think the problem is that so many of us are so tightly wound around AWS that a lot of us don't have a lot of experience with the Google platform or Azure for that matter. So it's hard to say. Next question.
Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas is asking, what is the backstory and what uses are there for the SEN gear that is showing the Earth from space on the International Space Station?
Because someone thought it would be a good idea, and they said, I'll pay for it. Probably NASA said that you'll have to, someone else will have to pay for it, and and it costs so much money per pound to put it up. Yeah, so I don't have an answer. I try to go to this I try to go to this YouTube channel, but I don't know what I'm supposed to be looking at. So you probably need to give me an exact time to look at. There's a whole bunch of stuff there. I do think we should probably, I have some friends at NASA, and we should probably enjoy everything we're getting from NASA because over the last month, NASA's been gutted. So we'll never have, the NASA that we knew will never exist again. So they let go all of the key personnel that understand how to make rockets go. Next question.
This one is from Peter Moore in Auckland, New Zealand. The high-end $7,000 PRS Herman Li Dragon Force came out with an SE version at $2,000. Thoughts? With a link.
I don't even know what that is. I couldn't. Oh, it's guitar. I don't know. I think you've asked a question in a non-guitar group. So, so definitely at that rate. I mean, we're usually talking 200 versus 800, not 2,000 versus 7,000. So, I don't know. Thank you all to everyone asking questions today. Of course, it's this show is a Q&A, so without your questions, it's a real short show. So thanks to the producers who asked all the great questions today, and thanks to the panelists. Of course, we can't do this without you having this great conversation. And we should never underestimate the incredible power of having people randomly showing up every morning, willing to answer your questions, and these fine ladies and gentlemen decided to show up and be part of this conversation. So thank you so much. And thanks to the incredible crew on the back end that makes this possible. This is a complex, as I described a little earlier, a complex show to put on. And we have an incredible team and incredible supporters that make that possible. If we had done this in person, the SmallRig Universal, we would have traveled 30,000 miles. That's 48,000 kilometers, and that is 236 million bananas for scale. All right, let's go ahead and jump into After Hours.
I'm going to go check my medication.
I think it's way off. That's all I'm saying. Whatever you're taking, it's either too much or not enough. I don't know what it is. I don't know which one.
Or he's dialed right in.
Yeah, you got to dial that in.
Cut everything in half.
Yeah, exactly. Try that first.
I might be the sane one in the room, and that should frighten you.
That is frightening.
Possibly.
Interdimensional beings.
What are you showing there, David?
What is that?
Yeah, see, David, you have the built-in, walking away from the chair angle. Just, move it over to the animations.
Yeah, that's the McDonald's sign across.
Oh my God! Oh, that's a sign. I thought that was a screen.
Screen too.
Well, it is a screen, but it's a sign.
It's across the street, not on his desk.
Oh my gosh, that is so big.
Yeah,
it's all the things.
It's all the pixels.
Wow.
Yeah, it's nuts. And especially when they advertise for French fries, and it's just like giant French fries coming up that display.
I'm hungry.
Yeah.
Makes you hungry.
I think I'd literally have to get the glasses with like the horse blinders, so I'm not seeing the French fry ads.
Yeah, that'd be hard. I definitely would cover that up.
I just think the NASDAQ building that's over your shoulder is so iconic. Like I would frame with that in it.
Like, that's that one.
The roundy one with the windows in it. Yeah, I've done animations for that, and they send you an AE template showing you where all the windows are going to cut in. into your art.
And the one behind that screen is a corner. It's an LG display on the corner, and they throw the cats or whatever in there that look like they're